everyone, and welcome to our YouTube channel, Moneyline with Nancy at TV. In case you're not a subscriber yet, please do subscribe. Just press the subscribe button as well as turn on the notification bell so that you can get notifications when we upload our videos. Don't also forget to subscribe and join, follow, like our other social media platforms. Of course, you're seeing it right about now. Don't also forget to share this video across your platforms. Enjoy the video. All right, welcome back to the program. My guest is joining me right now. Muktar Mohammed is the founder of Finance with Muktar. Hello, Muktar. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you for having me in your program. It's a dream come true. Like I said, I've been following your program for over a decade. Thank you. My pleasure.
You're welcome. Let's get started. Let's start with this impasse between Dangote Refinery and Pengerson. What do you have to say about that?
Nancy, you have hit the nail on the head. I saw your introduction on it. I think for the first time, Nigerians have been enjoying what we call stability in the oil and gas sector. And all of a sudden, this stability is being threatened by a few individuals that think they control the energy sector in Nigeria. Energy peace is critical to the survival of any nation. You're talking about cut of gas supply that will affect power company, that also will affect the export of crude outside the share of this country. I think is not something that should be happening now, especially with the challenge that we're already facing: low oil output. We cannot even meet our OPEC quota. We cannot even meet our budget allocation for oil crude output. And we're also suffering from oil price, $75 per barrel, and now it's doing about $66 per barrel. And then here we have this crisis. There's no need for it. I personally think so. I expected that whatever grievance if NUPEN, Pengerson have, they should have taken it to the industrial court. That will give confidence to investors to want to come to our country. Because if we are fighting with one of the biggest investment in the history of Nigeria in the oil and gas sector, how much confidence would you want foreigners to want to come and establish their company? Or the major internationals that have always given reason like this why they didn't want to establish a refinery in Nigeria as the challenge. I think both people should sit on the table and talk. The oil and gas sector is highly regulated. And again, that has also come from the physical side. How much of a policy do we have to protect Nigerian workers so that they cannot be sacked, just like what we are seeing now, that they have been sacked and replaced by foreigners? So all these are eye-opening, and hopefully this administration will be able to address that issue. But where I'm sitting, where I am now, I think this is a needless war. We don't need it at this time.
What does this say really about labor and management dynamics? Because labor, Pengerson is saying, okay, that Dangote's workers freely applied, and the company seeing that came up with a reorganization of the company, laying them off. Dangote, on one hand, is a businessman. Like I mentioned even during my intro, that this is, I think, perhaps the largest investment, that we've seen in recent times in Nigeria, $20 billion. Of course, those monies borrowed even from banks and wherever. There is, I think, a 7.2% stake of Nigeria's money in that refinery and all of that. So if you see the gamut, looking at the gamut of all of this, what does it say for labor management dynamics? Even if it's not a Dangote, for example, but today we are talking about Dangote. Then secondly, where does it put our energy security question? Because what this is also reminding me is years past where we saw refineries not working. We now resorted to importing fuel. We had a lot of people, briefcase businesses importing fuel, saying subsidy and all of that. We've seen the way the market has worked in the last few years. What does it say of energy security, even beyond the Dangote? Because we're all talking of Dangote today. Dangote himself, even as a company in that space alone, is not also good for the country. So we need to expand. What do you expect that even at the meetings today that they will be having, or even after these meetings, that government officials in that space should be thinking about?
Well, for energy security, like you just said, is a threat to our energy security. What we are seeing, like you said, over the years, we've not had a functional refinery. And at that time, I didn't see Pegasus go on strike complaining that we didn't have a functional refinery or trying to make sure government, rather they were really in support of government not removing subsidy. And we know what that has caused the government thus far. What I see in this, I think, is an organization also fighting for its own survival. And that is Pegasus, a union fighting for its own survival, knowing that Dangote is one of the biggest petroleum industrial employee, and if they don't get their members as a member of Pegasus, that also will affect the power base that they have in terms of calling people out for strike. Remember, Nancy, this started with Dangote intervention in doing delivery logistics. Now we have moved from that to Dangote, now sacking staff. And again, I think for me, when this refinery was established, we saw the fights from the privates, from some of those people that are benefiting from the subsidy scheme. And what we are seeing, I think, I might be wrong, but I think they are using Nupain, Pegasus have made themselves available for them to be used to sabotage one of the biggest investments in Nigeria, and also one of the biggest refinery in Africa, and one of the largest single train refinery in the world. And so I expect that we should come up with policy that will guide against this. We've seen it, Nigerian Labour Congress picketing on other establishments if they have issues with their management. And like you said, management itself is scaling up, is being able to do the right thing at the right time. We will say that when you look at Dangote and you look at Pegasus, have there really been a management strategy in addressing this problem? I think from both sides, both sides are claiming right. Nobody seems to want to listen to the other. But the good news is that the federal government is mediating. Hopefully, we will have a solution to that, especially in the sphere of energy security. For me, that is very, very key. But again, the cry of monopoly, the cry of Dangote taking over, I think in business is called the law of the first. The law of the first is very, very important for any business to survive. And I think that is what we have. So sometimes in the law of the first, that they become the ones that are monopolizing everywhere, because it's all about coming there the first and also fighting for survival. This is not good for us. And I can
That
say
also
just
where,
like you have said it.
yes,
And I think
Mukta, isn't that where also governments should come in? You know, because if you take a look at, there's a historical perspective to all of this. You know, even as much as we should say we should encourage investment, take a look at what happened in the US decades ago. Standard Oil, I'm sure you understand the story, and it was broken down to different companies that we've seen right now. What should the Nigerian government be doing? Because like in my intro, which of course I've seen different commentaries in different places, I'm not speaking against the Dangote. I'm not speaking for Pengassan. I'm looking at the larger picture, you know, in terms of how we manage the economy. If you take a look at where it is right now, how many more companies should we encourage? You understand what I mean? That sector has value chain, and people should also be in, should participate in that value chain. I hope you understand what I mean.
yes,
And that is
Nancy,
where
I
regulators
totally agree
actually
with
come
you,
in,
what you
because
are saying.
business people, capital
Exactly.
is driven by profit. They don't care what people say. They're like, they are driven by profit. You know, so if you have a large cocoon of people driven by profit, that is where government and regulation should come in. I'm looking at the bigger picture, even beyond what is happening right now.
Yeah, Nancy, I agree with you in terms of looking at the bigger picture. Yeah, you have brought in the United States as an example of what has happened. if the elephant that we have in the house are rightly taking its position, we won't be having the problem we are having. If NNPC
Which is NNPC,
Limited is
exactly.
actually, if NNPC Limited is actually doing that, I don't think that there won't be a better player to stop Dangote than NNPC Limited. I say I stand to be corrected. They have the largest infrastructure, and they could also do it without even using tankers, drivers, or whatever they want to use. Before now, Nancy, we used to pump petroleum products from Port Harcourt to as far as Maiduguri through the pipelines, and these pipelines are still there. All we need to do is to revive those infrastructure. So it boils down to the NNPC Limited, which is an organ of government at that time, that have not been able to stand up to Dangote. Even like you said, NNPC Limited have about 7 point something. They are supposed to have about 7 point something percent investment in Dangote refinery too. So when you talk about monopoly, when people talk about monopoly, I think we are creating that monopoly for ourselves. You talk about regulators, and like I said, the oil industry is the most regulated industry in Nigeria. I gave an example now. I want to give you an example of the marine sector. At a point, it was largely dominated by foreigners. They came with a local content act that says that a foreigner must have 60% presence. And today, you are not seeing that fight. A lot of locals are now owning the marine sector, or they are partnered with the foreigners. So what are the regulators in the petroleum sector doing that we are where we are today? And like I said, we don't have to go to this way because, again, I know for sure, I stand to be corrected. There is a policy on employment. There's a policy of getting expatriate in the oil and gas sector.
Exactly.
Has this policy been influenced by Dangote? We need to know. And it's not just calling your workers out of strike. Come out with facts and figures. Today you are saying that they were sacked because they belong to your union. And tomorrow Dangote is saying that they were sacked because they infringed on the company policy. So we must differentiate a private individual investment, like you say, from the unionism part of it to creating value. What this will cause if you decide that we continue to see this is going to shut down the most vibrant sector in the Nigerian economy that drive the growth in every sector, the petroleum sector. I think it's something they need to put national interest at stake and then be able to address this issue. I still say it's either Pegasus is making themselves available for the cabal that have drilled this nation for over 30 years with the payment of subsidy, or they are fighting for the right of their workers. And if they are doing that, they should do it under the rule of law. Because what you see, there are other investors that are planning to come and invest in this sector. And if they see what is happening now, then you continue to give Dangote the opportunity to be the largest player if you don't create the environment to get other competitors into this sector. Also, and other competitors will not come when you behave the way they are behaving at the moment.
Okay, I think we should leave this strike showdown between Pengasin and Dangote for a while, because there are other issues that we also need to talk about. PENCOM has raised capital requirements for PFAs, that's pension fund administrators and pension fund custodians. What do you think about this new wave? I call it a new regulatory era. This year, the banks. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, the insurance, the bank, the insurance, and now
Tax
we're
law.
in the pensions. I'm for one excited, and that's why we say.
Yes, go ahead, Muktar.
Okay. Can you hear me, Nancy?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I, for one, I'm excited. I'm excited by this because, again, that's why it's good to get the right people in the leadership of a sector, a critical sector like this. I think leadership is beginning to show in the PENCOM side of our economy. And that is also is a place that, if unlocked, would drive growth in virtually every sector of the Nigerian economy. I totally agree with the capital base being raised. I think it's preparing us for $1 trillion economy. That is good. And also, if you look at it, we shouldn't just look at the capital base alone. We can see that they've opened up investment into gold and derivatives. That is new.
Yeah.
We've not seen that. They have also created a dollar-dominated pension contributing scheme. Also, that is new. And they've also kept the rule that they must also participate in exchange that are approved by Security and Exchange Commission. For me, that is also key. I think it's a good move to get that sector, and also investment in infrastructure. The kind of number of infrastructure deficit that we have in this nation. So that is also key. I'm excited rather than just just using pension money to just do only the fixed income space, and that is all they do. Now they are taking it into the real economy and also attracting new players, looking at new means of investment to safeguard the contributing pension scheme. So it's a good move from the leadership, and also kudos to the government for also approving what they are doing.
Will this capital realignment impact returns for Nigerian workers' savings? Do you think so? Workers' savings for retirement?
That is, yeah, that's where my concern is, because again, it seems to be that the worker savings for retirement need to improve also with this capital injection, and also expansion, and also them investing in other sectors of the Nigerian economy. I think we need to see an improvement on that. But when you look at the sectors they are trying to invest, are sectors that can actually create more profit for the PFA. So I think it's something that I feel should improve the welfare of the pensioners, not only the pension fund administrators enjoying the benefit of this expansion. I think it should trickle down. And again, that is where regulation comes to play.
Let's move to another area, which is the capital gains tax. Of course, the capital gains tax in this new tax laws have been raised from 10% to 30%. As a market person, what do you think? It's been raised threefold. So what message does this send to investors, both domestic and foreign? And what does it mean, actually?
For foreign, yes. Nancy, for me, in as much as I love the Pension Act, I think it was a levy, the capital gain, especially at a time where we are trying to attract foreign direct investors and foreign portfolio investors. I think it's too high. I expected that we could have started with a threshold that is low and improve upon it over the years. Maybe in the next 5 or 10 years, we could get to that 30%. Starting at 30% immediately, that will also impact on investment, because you are talking, if I'm having a capital gain, I'm paying a capital gain of 30%, how much of the gain will I be able to make to be able to get that fund bring in, and then be able to make so much profit when I know 30% of that will be going to the government? I think it's something we could look at, but again, it also could deepen the market, could help the market in terms of liquidity for the long term. Because what that 30% gain means is also has to do with players that are short-term traders in the market. As long as your fund is not liquidated, you still have, you don't pay the 30% capital gain. So that would also help in one way or the other to deepen the market in the area of liquidity. But again, it has its own shortfall, especially in terms of attracting foreign investors into the Nigerian market.
Muktar, sorry to cut you short. If you say that it will increase liquidity in the capital markets, wouldn't it shrink liquidity, perhaps in the equity space, for example?
That's what I'm saying. It could. That's what I'm saying. I said it could create liquidity in the equity space also. But again, most of the foreign players, why it's going to squeeze liquidity in the equity space is that a lot of the equity players are being driven by retail investors at the moment. They are not driven by foreign investors or institutional investors. And that is where the challenge will be, and especially when you are trying to help Nigerian ownership of the market. Thus far, what we have seen in the equity market is largely driven by retail investors. Over 80% of them are Nigerian. That also will not help the equity market in the short, or in the short, especially in the short to long term. So it's something I think the government should look at it again. And secondly, do you have the modality? Do you have the infrastructure? Do you have the system to really make sure that this law are implemented with all sincerity of purpose? Because what you see at the end of the day is sometimes the tax personnel harassing the investors, and then investors happen to settle out, even government not enjoying that profile. It could give room for corruption also if you don't create the environment and have the infrastructure to be able to maintain it. We're talking about regulation, and you and I know that regulation has always been a problem in terms of policy in Nigeria. So if we are doing that, then we have to improve regulatory framework, and also be seen to be doing it with all sincerity of purpose.
Muktar, let's talk a bit about GDP numbers. Like I said during my intro, I just had to vent this morning, though. I haven't vented like that in a while. Because you hear all sorts of economic charts here and there and all of that, but some people not even having historical perspective of where we're coming from. Look at the GDP numbers. Government is saying, oh, we are doing well, 4.23%. But the foundation is weak. What do you have to say about that? Even the agriculture is
Yeah.
underperforming. Manufacturing is nowhere. Industry is nowhere. Services, of course, high. After services is agriculture. But underlining that services is a weak base because it's not even productively based. They are just like small, small things around. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I get to
Or
Nancy,
whether I'm
and
just seeing
I've also
whether I'm just in my own
yes.
dreamland.
No, you're not alone in that. I've also said it. The recent GDP growth we have is driven largely by rebasing, and again, rebasing on itself cannot grow your economy. What is rebasing? Rebasing is all about telling the international community or international investors that we have discovered a very new area in our economy that we think we need investors to come in, or we need investment in that sector. It's a new aspect, so you can attract both foreign direct investors. And Nancy, you know that in terms of foreign direct investor, they are non-existent. After the 8 years of President Muhammad Buhari, we didn't see that. At the point it was almost zero. So that's all about the rebasing. So rebasing in itself is not a key factor to drive down inflation. Rebasing is not itself the key factor to grow your GDP. But the growth that we are seeing today is largely driven by rebasing, and rebasing in itself cannot do that. So what we need to do, we need to see those productivity in those areas. If you see the non-oil sector and you see what they've been able to achieve, it's largely driven by the financial markets, and especially the banking sector. And you and I know why that is, because they are looking for capital now to do their recapitalization. After of that, how productive are the other sector, like you have mentioned, to be able to drive growth in the non-oil sector? The oil sector that have 20% growth according to the data from MBS. But again, when you look at that 20% growth, by and by what we need, then you know it's small. And when you commend yourself for growing the non-oil sector, it contributes about 98% into the GDP. I ask in terms of value, when I talk about value, in terms of monetary terms, in terms of effects adding to our reserve, how much have the non-oil sector been able to contribute? Especially when you look at the oil sector also doing little. But the little in the oil sector seems to swallow whatever the non-oil sector has been able to achieve in terms of value. So we need to look at that and begin to really, really drive growth in those sectors. You're talking about the fintech sector. How many investment have we seen in that space? You're talking about the mining sector. The areas that we have some of these large mining fields that will mine things like gold have been affected today. There have been places that are battling banditry and terrorism. How much of its security have we improved in those areas?
Okay.
You're talking about agriculture. What about the value chain of agriculture? Creating warehouses for farmers to store this product to be able to export them outside the shore of this country. How much of those value chains that government be able to provide or create the environment for those value chains to grow so that we can see the real growth in the GDP? Any GDP that is largely only growth by productivity in a particular sector is not GDP. The GDP growth of any nation is determined by how much that sector is able to produce employment for Nigerians.
Sorry, Muktar, I just have to come because we have like a minute to the end, and I can't conclude this interview without asking, as Nigeria celebrates 65 years this week. During my intro also too, I did, a historical perspective of where we were, of course, what has happened from 1960s. Yeah, Nigeria was projected to be an economic giant, by the time we were independent from the British colonial masters. 65 years later, why has South Korea, for example, which was poorer than Nigeria in 1960, leapfrog us? South Korea got its independence, I think, in 1945. They are like 20 years ahead of us. But in 1960, they were very poor. Now, South Korea, of course, has outsmarted us, outlasted us. For people that watch Survivor, outlive, outsmart, outwit, Why are we here where we are 65 years later?
I think the story of the Nigerian economy has been the good, the bad, the ugly. Unfortunately, our generation have met the ugly. We didn't even meet the good. We didn't even meet the bad. We meet the ugly. But I think the greatest injustice that is supposed to be, maybe the greatest injustice that maybe you say God did to us, and God is a just God. It's that they made us to find oil, and after oil came, we suspended every
You're
other
talking of the
area of
resource
our
cost,
economy,
Dutch disease.
so we now stood there in the oil sector, and so that has been one of our greatest challenge and one of our greatest problem. If you look at the South Korea that you are saying, they looked at their population and knew that they could also grow through the service sector, and they invested a lot in the service sector. They don't have the kind of raw materials that we have now. So I think we neglected one area that has brought us, that would have brought us to become a key player in the world, that is the agricultural sector. Then we also neglected our people in terms of developing
Human
our people,
capital.
because no economy developed through the work of the of foreigners. So that has been our greatest undoing.
Okay.
So I mean, and this will take a lot. It will take a lot of policy shift. It will need to take a lot of governance. It will take a lot of political will to be able to turn the corner for Nigeria. In as much as we have seen some relatively good things in the 65 years of Nigeria, we can't say it's all gloomy. But again, a lot of sectors that would have been the key drivers of this economy are not really contributing because of policies.
Thank you very much, Muktar. Thank you for your insights this morning. Thank you.
My pleasure, Nancy. Thank you.
All right, I've been speaking with Muktar Mohammed, founder Finance with Muktar. We've been looking at the topical economic issues in the country, so many. That's the much we can take on today's edition of the program. Thank you for your company as always from the team and I. I am Nancy Naji. Have a pleasant day and be the best you can be. Be the change that you want to see. Bye for now. Thank you for making it up to this minute watching the video. Thank you all. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Moneyline with Nancy TV. Like, follow all our other social media platforms where we keep you up to speed with fantastic interviews, as well as markets, personal finance, business, and economy information. This is the best place to be. I'll see you all again in the next video.